This is kind of a golden rule in cinema. Obviously, you could break the rules and do whatever the hell you want, but this is one rule that I always follow. I'm gonna go over my top pieces of like gear that I use for creating cinematic images. That is not a camera, but I am cheating a little bit. You'll see later. Instead of me sitting behind the desk and doing the typical like YouTuber top 5 things, I wanted to make something that I would personally want to watch. And I want to show you guys a full-on scene breakdown. So let's go through what I have set up so far. We have the Zhiyun M20C. This is just doing a little bit of a, RGB kicker on the wall here. I own so many different lights. I thought I'd just keep it all Zhiyun just because it's a little bit more affordable and compact than some of the other stuff I own. So I'm trying to make this more of a user-friendly video here. So up here we have the Zhiyun G200, and with the Zhiyun softbox here, you can see how big this is. The bigger you get a light source, the just softer the light you can get overall. Obviously it doesn't look natural, but I think it looks pretty decent. Haze. Before I get into haze though, I want to set up one more light because this light is seriously, I'm not lying, this light's my most used light. We were just on a job 2 days ago. I was directing this big old thing for one of the shopping, I can't say what, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what it is, but anyways, Zhiyun, someone told me how to say it, I forgot already. The Molus X100, just because this is 100 watts and this little compact thing, you can easily connect a battery. Guys, don't click off. I'm telling you, this video is gonna get even more interesting. Let me just turn it up to 1% here. You can see we're at 1%. Let's go all the way to 100. That's 100 there. You guys can see in our main shot right here that there is a lamp behind me, and it's kind of adding a little bit of separation between me and the wall. Well, I want to add a kicker behind me. This is why I love this light, because this is usually how I use it. I don't put it on a light stand or anything. I literally just put it on its battery. We're at 1% on it, and that might be a little bit too bright still. So you guys can see what that's doing. It's just adding a little bit of a rim light here. When creating cinematic images, it's all about lighting contrast. You want to try to create as much contrast. The easiest way to do that is put your subject between you and your light source, and you want to shape it around them, but you want to create some specular highlights, whether that's a rim light, a hair light, specular highlights from practicals in the background. So you guys can see that's set up there. This looks beautiful. Might be a little bit overlit. It depends like what kind of style you want. Again, this is going for more of a cinematic YouTube type thing, so I can get away with it. Now, before I go into haze, because haze is how you create volumetric lighting. People think diffusion filters is like gonna get the same look. It is not. But before we get into that, I'm gonna go over 2 boring things that people might click off. And I think this is the most important part of this video, because these 2 things are what got me to really understand lighting. So let's get into the first thing here real quick. I promise I will make this quick. Click on the next chapter instead of clicking off the video. But first thing, this book, please guys, I'm telling you guys, I know some of you guys probably want to click off. This is still like an artist. I read this years ago when I was doing more music stuff, and it unlocked my brain. I used to feel guilty about trying to copy other people's work. That's kind of the key. Like you learn, like some of the biggest directors out there, they were copying some of their favorite directors. I do have to give a disclaimer though. I remember just like 3 to 4 years ago when Western work started to blow up, there's a lot of photographers that were coming into that side of the industry, and they would rip off my work. They would legit try to get the same models, the same team, the same secret locations that were my locations that, I share with friends and homies, to the point where every day a new person would send me their work saying, hey, like I thought this was your work. This guy's straight up copying you, which is fine. Again, it's not a big deal. But when it became a big deal is they're starting to go after my same clients, trying to do work for almost pennies. And that kind of ruins the industry. That's why I kind of left photography. But anyways, this book opened up my brain to see things differently. That leads me into the next thing here, and that's shotdeck.com. So this untapped my brain. Shotdeck.com like led my brain. I remember I would go on Google and I would try to Google some of my favorite films, or I would just go buy the film and try to pause it, and I would just try to break down what they're doing for the lighting. Now with shotdeck.com, like you could just go on there, you can look up any movie, you can look up a certain color, a certain type of interior, exterior, time of day. I'm telling you guys, like when I started to get more creative on YouTube with my lighting setups, is because I was looking at ShotDeck so much, and I would just straight up copy the inspiration that I was finding off of there. I think that's such a underestimated tool to use. Now let's get back into the stuff for everybody who has ADHD like me and didn't tune off of this video. I want to take this to the next level. How am I going to do that? The Smoke Genie. So this is just a handheld. I'm not gonna admit how many times I've dropped this. This is a handheld hazer. I know a lot of the haters are gonna be like, oh, my vape can do that. It cannot do that. And if you do that, your room's gonna be smelling like cotton candy, because I know all you hazing people, you guys smell gross. Anyways, no offense, that was me. I do need to refill this because we used it on that job. we were shooting Santa. It was pretty cool, but I was adding haze because the lighting, they didn't give us any time to set up for the light, and I just popped some haze up, and all of a sudden, our light looked magical. It looked like we knew what we were doing. You guys are gonna see we're gonna get volumetric lighting. I promise you, your diffusion filters will not get the same effect. What this is doing is this is creating, it's creating atmosphere. It's creating some depth that the light has to cut through. So you guys can see before, our light just looked very contrasty and it looked, a little bit more commercial. Now we're getting a little bit more of a filmic vibe, and I barely put any of the haze out there. I'm gonna haze it up even more. But you can see like in this area behind me, it's almost like we're getting a layer of new color. That's because, again, this is volumetric lighting. All right, guys, we have one more thing. And the whole reason I'm setting up this shot over here is to show you this thing. So let's get into this. I said no cameras. It's a little bit of a cheat code here. I want to talk about the Go 3 real quick. The reason I'm including this to the video is BTS for me was a huge way for me to learn. I would watch BTS for some of my favorite movies, and just seeing like, oh, that lighting setup they did for my favorite scene was way easier than I thought it was going to be. Some people might agree with me that in the future, this next tip might be important, but I think right now it is important. As a filmmaker, a creative content creator, just whatever you want to call it, it's super important to capture behind the scenes adventures or travels. Because for me, since I've been doing that and putting on social media, I find that when brands hire me, it's not the brand hiring you, it's the people who work for that brand hiring you. They want to see who you are, they want to see what type of person you are, and that has got me a lot of bookings. I hit up Insta360 and they're like, well, you have to check out the Ace Pro if you like the Go 3. While this video is about the gear I use to create cinematic images, I'm gonna put all this to practice while I talk about the Insta360 Ace Pro. Set up the X100 back there just to create a little bit of a 6500 Kelvin rim light, mimicking the light that's coming from outside. Then we'll put this X100 also in frame. Obviously, you can crop all this stuff out if you wanted to, but that's just gonna be my key light. We're on 5500 Kelvin. I'm gonna warm it up a little bit, create a little bit more color separation, and then post will cool down the overall exposure to make the outside and the rim light look a little bit more cooler. There we go. Last thing we need is haze. Obviously, my front door is open, so a lot of this is gonna go right out the door, as they say. Again, the whole point of this is just to create some atmosphere and density that the light can cut through. So you can see the 6500 Kelvin light, we're getting some of that blue saturation in there. Another important thing, I didn't do this in the last shot, but is to loft the haze, so because you kind of want it to even out. Pretty large living room, and the haze is still staying in here even with my sliding glass window open, my front door open. And yeah, let's talk about the Ace now. All right, guys, outside of the image quality that we're getting out of this is literally the best image quality you could get out of a little small action camera right now. We have a quick release system, so you can see that just pops off there. What's super cool about the design that they did here is we have a screen that could pop out. I think anybody who uses a GoPro to vlog or, get BTS, wherever it is, this is gonna pretty much take over this, because you can actually use this as a vlogging camera now. They use AI to really control the highlight. This is the first time I've seen HDR from an action camera look more realistic, to where it's not just oversaturating all the colors and the skin tones, it's targeting the highlights and it's keeping all the saturation in the highlights while bringing it down. I'm kind of hoping we get AI features like that in our actual bigger cinema cameras, because that's just going to be pretty groundbreaking. Standout features for me personally is the fact that we can do 4:3 readout. We do have all these color profiles here. I always just keep everything on flat, because you guys know I like to have ultimate control over my final image there. Something important about the AI HDR is I can push the exposure and it's still going to hold the highlights. It's not going to blow those out. You can see all the light back there. It's holding the saturation in the trees across the street. So why this is important is when you're shooting on action cameras, they can get kind of noisy if you're really pushing the exposure. So you want to overexpose as much as possible. Usually when you do that on other action cameras though, your highlights are just gone, they're blown out. And I think the way that they're processing all this is they're using similar chips like processors that Mac uses, like the smaller ones that's in our iPhone, iPads, our new MacBooks. So even when you're swiping through the screen, this is the most intuitive, fast paced. It feels like the iPhone basically on the back of the screen. I know I said no cameras, but I don't really see these things as cameras. I see them as tools. One, for getting BTS, and second, it's just keeping your creativity up. I know a lot of us, when we watch films or we watch favorite YouTubers, we think, oh, this person said this, and so this is how it's done. No, if you have a good idea, if you have a different idea, if you have a creative idea and you're like, Roger Deakins would do this, Quentin Tarantino would do this, who gives a shit? Do it if you want to do it. That's what's going to make you an individual. That's what's going to make your shots stand out. That's what's going to make it look cinematic. All right, guys, for the last and final tip, I practiced it throughout this whole video, and that's shooting from the dark side. This is kind of a golden rule in cinema. Obviously, you could break the rules and do whatever the hell you want, but this is one rule that I always follow. So throughout the video, I've always put myself between the camera and the light, and I'm always trying to shoot from the shadow side of my face here. Any of your favorite cinematic movies that you watch, you're going to notice they're always shooting from the shadow side. Just to prove how cinematic this golden rule works, I'm gonna put a Q-tip in front of the camera. And you guys tell me, does this look cinematic? You guys are staring at a Q-tip right now. Can you tell me if this looks cinematic or not? Anyone who says that isn't cinematic, y'all just some haters. Also guys, I need to mention the gear that I actually used to film this video. Shooting on the Sony FX3 with the Sigma 35mm 1.4, and I'm using the Module 8 L3 tuner. Oh, let's go. Come on. Again, guys, I hate to have cinematic in my title and be the guy who's showing off their dog in the backyard and stuff, but that's just what I'm stuck with. Hi.